All right, folks, let's do this. My name is David Parsons, and you are listening to Nostalgia Trap, and I thank you very much for doing so. I know you've got a lot of opportunities to consume content out there, but somehow you're listening to Nostalgia Trap, and I deeply appreciate that. I really do. And I hope you enjoy what I've got for you today. We are talking with Ross Benesch. He's written a couple of books, one called Rural Rebellion, that's entirely about the kind of Thomas Frank thesis, how Nebraska became a Republican stronghold. He's got a lot to say about the interaction of politics and culture, and his latest book caught my attention, of course, because it's all about 90s culture. This book is called 1999, The Year Low Culture Conquered America and Kickstarted Our Bizarre Times. This is a super fun book. Ross takes on insane Clown Posse, Jerry Springer, pro wrestling, all sorts of other stuff that kind of are associated with low culture. I know that's kind of a loaded term, and we talk about that in this episode, along with the larger sort of political and economic elements of this. It's not just a cultural phenomenon, this sort of descent into the toilet in the late 90s that I think we're still in some ways, but it has to do with the restructuring of media as well. So this was a really, honestly, enlightening and eye-opening conversation. I enjoyed talking with Ross, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. If you like what we do here on Nostalgia Trap, we are an entirely independent podcast, meaning we depend on listeners for our support. So if you go to our Patreon page, the link is in the episode description. You can subscribe for just a couple bucks a month, support the show, and get access to, honestly, a gigantic library of bonus episodes and videos and writing. I appreciate that, and I thank you for being a Nostalgia Trap listener. Enjoy this conversation. Here is me and Ross Benesch. Thank you, Ross, for being here. I appreciate it.
Good to be here.
You've got a book out. I want to say the name of it before we even get started. It, of course, lights me up to hear these words. This book is called 1999, The Year Low Culture Conquered America and Kickstarted Our Bizarre Times. I love that the whole thesis is in the title and subtitle of that book. But welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here and looking forward to talking late 90s culture with you.
Well, I appreciate that you're you like the fact that the subtitle is a complete sentence.
It's rare. I feel like a lot of especially like academic press books, they sort of try to, they all have have you noticed that they all have a kind of similar sort of cadence to them, where they sort of try to wrap everything up, and it can go well and it can be poetic, but it can also be a disaster, I feel like.
Well, it's good that I put the year as the title, because otherwise with the academic press it'd be like, Kickstarted the Bizarre Times, comma 1991 to 2002. Like they really gave you the time frame in some of the titles.
Well, it's a pretty bold thesis to be like, I'm going to talk about 1 year. But I like that kind of stuff. I like to sometimes, I like to sort of chronologize and think about, one specific thing a lot. What made you narrow in on 1999? I know that's sort of like asking what the whole book is about.
Yeah.
But why'd you sort of think about 1999 as such a pivotal moment?
Well, as far as the title being that way, I was kind of inspired by the documentary The Year Punk Broke.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like it's all about, 1 year in the early
Right.
90s.
Yep. It broke 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year. The other years shit didn't happen at all. But the reason I chose 99 as opposed to, you could write a similar book about 97 or, 2000, 2001. The pop culture was just a little more ridiculous than it was in the years before, the years after. And part of that's like due to Y2K and some of the just weird stunts that were going on. So if I'm writing about kitschiness, I felt that 99 was just elevated more than the other years in that era.
Well, you've got I remember 99 really well because it was my last year of college, and I was in the film studies department at UC Santa Barbara surrounded by like very sort of like elitist, snobby cinema type people, as you can imagine in a film studies department. And I remember this push and pull between like sort of where American culture seemed to be going. At the same time, you write about this in your book. 99 was a great year for movies. There were like really good movies out that year from like a whole range of places, like art cinema, great Hollywood movies. It's almost like, I don't know, it's sort of like a last burst, at least in that decade, of really, really good stuff. So it feels like there was a high and low. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And there definitely was a banner year for cinema. You know, Brian Rafferty makes a convincing case in his book. You know, if you just look at the movies that came out in '99, you know, we certainly don't have anything like that today. I mean, it's really astonishing that you probably have like 2 dozen, you know, pretty good movies in one year. But my whole take, I'm not denying the existence of that or the great music that happened in that era. I just think we're more shaped by the trash today than we are. Like, it'd be great if we lived in a world that was, you know, influenced by those great movies. But it would like we're living in a Jerry Springer world is what I'm going for.
Yeah, no, totally. And let's talk about that because your take on all of these pieces of what we call trash culture, and I'd love to hear like what how you define trash too. But sort of like it's convincing to me in terms of I like the way you connect the like Beanie Babies, for instance, to NFTs. You know, the idea that you can draw a straight line from Beanie Babies to NFTs, because the idea of like people buying sort of like tokens essentially
Hmm.
that don't have any quote unquote real value, but end up having some sort of cultural value, and that becoming, I don't know, into the world of finance is just fascinating stuff to me.
Yeah, well, so I do, yeah, believe that NFTs were like the adult Beanie Babies for people of a few years ago, where, like you said, it's like a collector's thing that is hyped up beyond what it really is and becomes an instrument of financial speculation, and it just kind of shows the strangeness of capitalism that like people would pour savings into a stuffed animal or into a, you know, digital artwork that they don't actually really own. It's really bizarre how these things pop up. But what I define as like low culture or trash culture, and it's very much in the eye of the beholder. But I'm looking at what's the most mocked or ridiculed pop culture of that era. So like what from the 90s was the stuff that people made the most fun of or put down the most. Like Jerry Springer's the worst show of all time according to TV Guide. Saying Clown Posse is the worst band of all time according to Blender magazine. You know, Beanie Babies are a thing we just kind of laugh about and don't think about the mania that underpinned its economic success, but it's like, you know, kind of like a crazy craze that's a footnote in history. I have video games in there, even though they're not probably considered trashy by today's standards. In the 90s they were vilified and looked at as children's entertainment. So, you know, one man's trash is another man's treasure. You can find what people define as low culture varies from person to person, but I'm just trying to go as broadly as possible with like, what's the shit that people consumed that they'd get made fun of for or that'd be critically mocked, and that's like how I came up with these 6 items.
Is it, I mean, is it sort of, I mean, it intersects with politics and class, it seems like, right? I mean, part of it is like, I mean, I described like being in college, right? So I'm like surrounded
Hmm.
by this sort of like liberal elite culture that, yeah, looked at Limp Bizkit and Insane Clown Posse and all that shit and was just sneering at it. I mean, I'm hearing like a lot of it linking up to the way that liberals were sort of totally blown over by Trump's popularity. They're sort of like, wow, how does everyone like him? He's so crass and gross, and like it seems almost like impossible that liberals in that elite culture would still be surprised that so many people like this shit when what you're talking about as a 1999 phenomenon is like, yeah, despite it being made fun of and derided by highbrow critics, people love it. People seem to, Americans seem to really love this shit.
Oh yeah, they do love this shit. They love the combativeness. They like the crudeness. I don't think it's something that distracts from most people. It's something that they um enjoy. But as far as, yeah, it's definitely historically low and high culture is a class thing, like the high culture, they like the opera and the Met, and low culture likes the whatever the, most aggressive form of music is of that era or whatever. But like those divisions
Or
have
going to the
fairly
dog races or something like that. Yeah.
going to the dog races. Yeah, yeah, cockfights.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
um, but it wouldn't be just like liberals. It's in the 90s, if you look at like who came after Jerry Springer, you also have like William Bennett and all these like upper crust Republicans hate this stuff, like cultural conservatives
That's
uh
true.
hate kind of all the things that I'm writing about in this book. So the attacks came from left and right, but yeah, more so from like upper class, um, you know, people who are well educated. Now, a lot of those people now today are fans of reality TV and some of this stuff, but in the
Mm.
90s, that's who was giving it the heat.
Can you talk a little bit about the kind of political economy of this? Because that was a convincing part of your argument for me. One of the more, I think, compelling parts of it is the idea that something changed in the way people consume media. Something changed in the structure of media that led to this particular template of culture in the 90s. So what changed?
Well, a lot of deregulation through the 80s and 90s contributed to the rise of this trash. And I'll just give you like a few examples because that can seem like a just a wonky thing to say with no specificity. Uh, so there used to be these rules called the financial and syndication uh there's FinCEN, financial and syndication interest rules that prevented broadcast TV networks from owning most of their own programming. So they had to like license out a lot of the shows that they'd air in prime time. They couldn't just produce all their stuff in house and then license it however they wanted to. When those rules were repealed in the 90s, that's a deregulation, FCC deregulation. It incentivizes the networks to go for cheaper content, to produce the lowest common denominator programming because suddenly they own it and they can sell it elsewhere. So, like reality TV takes off in the late 90s and early 2000s in part as a response to that deregulation, which like they're operating under a new set of incentives that they weren't before. You didn't have the incentive to like before you would have like had to license, you would have had to like go license from someone your reality show that you're going to air. Now that you can make it yourself for nothing, like that's a whole different proposition.
Mm.
Um, infomercials so, in the 90s, it's be like Miss Cleo and Girls Gone Wild and Kevin Trudeau's fraudulent schemes. Those
Oh
come
God, I
about.
forgot about Kevin Trudeau. Where is that guy
Yeah.
now? Yeah.
Uh, Hopefully in a very small corner of YouTube that no one's watching. I don't know what he's
Very
doing.
Trumpian dude, though.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, all those characters, they're they wouldn't have the opportunity to create televised infomercials if Reagan didn't deregulate advertising allotments. So when you cut out like, you used to have to ration out how much advertising time an hour a TV network could air. Once you say TV networks can air as much ads as they want, you can make programs that the whole program is a commercial. And that gave you stuff like G.I. Joe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which are basically toy ads that are, cartoons. But you also get infomercials and, some of the trashiest entertainment from the 90s is those infomercials. They are made possible through a deregulation. So whether it's like the proliferation of online porn, reality TV, like all these trashy things I talk about are encouraged through deregulation. And then, especially when you have the Telecommunications Act and the 92 Cable Bill and a few other laws that basically encourage conglomerates to grow larger because you're eliminating ownership restrictions that used to exist. Like when a film company can own a TV network and a cable company can become a phone provider and everyone can get in everyone's business. There used to be separation between all these
Right.
types of companies.
Right.
When everyone can get in everyone's business, they all chase cheap programming for the masses. Like so that contributes to the a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about. What you're taking debt leveraged mergers and you're trying to like drive as much ad dollars and subscription dollars as you can while spending as little as possible. You cut educational programming and current affairs and like, you go all in on infomercials, reality TV, game shows, all this junk.
Yeah,
And
and
I like this junk, but like that contributes to all of it.
well, yeah, let's talk about the liking the junk because I mean, so much of us do, and I'm someone who pursued a PhD, sort of I mean, you write books as well. We're educated liberal twats, and yet at the
Yeah,
same
this is with an academic press.
right, and at the same time, I appreciate a lot of this stuff and was born, born into it, like that. As much as I'm a little bit older than you. I remember watching Jerry Springer and just finding it hilarious and like really appreciating it. And even like the show Cops that I grew up watching was in this sort of reality TV mode of showing a different kind of America than you generally saw in the kind of like polished version of American families that you saw on TV. So I always felt like that, like Jerry Springer was showing the real sort of the kind of shit you weren't supposed to think about or think is classy or cool. Um, I remember when there would be a fight on Jerry Springer
Hmm.
and everyone was chanting Jerry, Jerry. Like there was something so powerful and funny about it. And now I'm trying to unpack like it's very easy to be like, oh my God, we went down the toilet, during that era. But I mean, Jerry was a liberal. Like Jerry
Oh
was a
yeah.
guy, like if you remember, wasn't he like mayor of Cincinnati? I think he was like
Yeah, mayor
a
of
political.
Cincinnati. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Jerry
what?
Springer was so progressive, in fact, that when he resigned from Cincinnati since like a city council, Cincinnati City Council. Well, that's a tongue twister.
Yeah. Wow.
Uh, yeah, don't say it 5 times real fast. After having he got caught with a prostitute because he signed a check, the dumbest thing you could possibly do. He paid for a prostitute service at a massage parlor with the signed check. He resigns in humiliation, and these Catholic nuns who loved Springer because he was a champion to their progressive causes for helping like the poor and disabled. They sent the other members of the city council like a bag of pebbles because they're saying, "Thou without sin shall cast the first stone."
Mm,
Don't have Jerry Springer resign from the city council. This is before he was trash
yeah.
TV pope.
Right.
But
Right.
that's what he was like
That's
back then.
amazing. Yeah, and that captures something. I mean, Jerry Springer captured something about what a lot of us already saw in America, which there was this sort of carnival-esque kind of I, trashiness, for lack of a better word. Like there is it feels more real. It's funny that they call it reality TV. Is people drinking, doing drugs, cheating on each other, and getting in fights because in a lot of ways, what it makes me feel and is that there's sort of like an id in America that is a lot in a lot of ways more powerful than that liberal elite culture, if that makes sense. Like that's the real undercurrent there. And it's not even an undercurrent. It's just been it had been repressed on TV for a long time. It had been repressed in popular culture, and it was always sort of bubbling under the surface. And maybe it was part of the political economy that you describe, and part just the power of that id coming out in the late 90s.
Well, yeah, all this low culture that I described, it kind of has a democratizing effect because when you repeal rules on ownership or you eliminate rules on decency, people tend to like the indecent stuff. They're if they're voting with their eyes or their eyeballs, um, they're going for the Jerry Springers of the world. And now it's like not just the television host; it's clearly in our national politics, which is kind of frightening. Um, it's different when you're watching on
Yeah.
TV than when they're making policy.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that's what's making me think about this sort of like the if you remember this term from like 10 years ago, the dirt bag left,
Hmm.
right? Was this idea that there would be a kind of a melding of progressive political values and trash culture, and that those things could go together. You mentioned Rax King in your introduction. I've had her on the show a couple times. I'm really compelled by that idea that like trash culture, as much as liberals like sort of wring their hands about it, and think that it's connected automatically to right-wing politics are sort of missing something. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's an article from like the early 90s in the Nation magazine that I write about in the book where they are condemning Jerry Springer and saying he's like a stormtrooper for the right. And I'm like, well, that totally misses the point. Like Jerry Springer, as you mentioned, the person was a progressive, and you could make your own versions of all this trash and just not have it be like right leaning. Like I don't mind the crudeness of the people who are in office. It's that they make terrible policies that harm people is
Right.
the issue. Like if you had like a, really crude asshole Democrat, like, well, if he reaches people and they vote for him, like I don't see an issue with
That's
that.
populism, right? And it feels like the liberals, especially, are scared of that, and that's partly why we're in the moment we're in. Is there's a reaction to that phoniness. I mean, just this morning, I was seeing that Gavin Newsom, who I'm in California, so he's our Lord King here in California. Gavin Newsom, I think it wasn't even him. It was someone like a surrogate of his, someone from the Newsom administration described Stephen Miller as a cuck online, and basically just like Stephen Miller's like a cuck ass bitch, like something like that. And the press was going after Gavin Newsom, being like, do you really stand beside your official using that kind of language? And do you really how can you pretend to be better than Donald Trump when you're not elevating our language and instead you're engaging in the same kind of disgusting wordplay that Trump and his people are? And to his credit, Newsom was like, I don't really care. Like that's the kind of shit they react to. So we're going to talk like that, and we're not going to be bullied by it. And it just feels like that.
And it's
Yeah,
not untrue. Like
right,
Stephen Miller is a cuck.
right, totally. I mean, is a cuck ass bitch Nazi, right? Like
Yeah.
that to me, you never hear politicians talk like that. Like even Mamdani, the like big hero in New York right now, is measured in his language. There's still this sort of Barack Obama type
Yeah.
performance, right? Of like the better speaking to our better angels kind of thing.
Yeah, I
And
was
I'm
thinking
like,
Michelle Obama when you were saying all that when she said like they go low, we go high or whatever.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can see the utility of all of it, but I think what your book is on to is this sort of like the power that is in American culture of sort of like not putting on airs and actually talking the way people talk. I mean, you see how much how much podcasts have become a sort of dominant mode of discourse. I mean, I'm sorry to say to you and to me that it's not academic books that are
Yeah.
like turning the discourse right now. It's people on
No.
podcasts who are like, dude, I'm fucking swinging a kettlebell right now. Like that's how they talk. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
bussing
why.
with the boys is like so huge now. It's
Right.
crazy because it's just like a football player who I like, have been following for years, and now he's like interviewing the president, and like, what the fuck? And that's just broy shit. Like,
Well, Howard Stern has a lot to do with that, right? I mean, you
yeah.
write you write about Howard Stern. I mean, how much has Howard Stern changed? I mean,
Oh,
it's
before
kind
we get to Howard Stern, though, I was just
yeah.
also thinking what you were saying about the podcast. I mean, it just goes back to with Harris in the last presidential race when didn't want to do Rogan or those other shows because she did, I can't remember, was it Meet the Press? She did like one of those like old school established TV shows instead of doing those
Yeah.
podcasts, and I think that was the wrong decision.
Totally. Yeah. No, we've mentioned that on the show. I mean, Bernie Sanders went on Rogan and
Yeah.
like chopped it up with them, and there's nothing to be afraid of there. Yeah, it drives me crazy. But I mean, part of it is sort of like I hate the fact that that's what happened. That these types of dudes became the kind of like
Hmm.
dominant voice in American culture. But the other part of me is just kind of like, what can I do about that? That's just like that is the mainstream now. It's not subversive anymore. It just is the way people talk, and that's what liberals feel like. The mainstream is still like Meet the Press
Yeah.
that nobody fucking watches.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're like under 60.
Well, look at the numbers. I mean, YouTube, like so many more people watch YouTube
Oh,
than
yeah.
like MSNBC.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you're not collecting Social Security, you're watching YouTube instead of
None of us are
cable
going to
television.
collect Social Security now. That's the irony. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, true. If you're not collecting it right fucking now. Like if you're
Right.
not, 80
The
years old
last
right now.
generation to collect Social Security.
Yeah. So you were asking about Howard Stern, because I didn't mean to dodge
No,
that.
not at
I was
all.
just
I mean,
so
this is you write about so much in your book. We can't get to all of it, but there's so much that
yeah.
we could talk about.
So what Howard Stern, the one thing I find interesting about him, and this goes back to your point about the deregulation contributing to the rise of trash culture, which, there's a whole debate to be had there with like conservatives who push for a free market, who tend to, not want a coarse society, who tend to want to censor things, especially in the 90s. By pushing for a free market, they brought all this stuff to the forefront. But Howard Stern is an example of like those deregulations that I've mentioned earlier contributed to Viacom becoming the largest media company in the history of the world at the time, like in 1999. And that one company turned him into a superstar in a way that one company could not have before. So like Howard Stern's books were by Simon and Schuster, which were under Viacom. His TV shows were on E. His radio show was under the CBS Viacom umbrella. His film that was based on his book was made in the Viacom umbrella. You could rent it at Blockbuster, which they also owned. So like everything he did in all these different forms of media was all one company. They can make him a superstar very easily. And before all those deregulations, each of those types of companies would have a different parent company. Like
Hmm.
the radio company would have been linked to the film company, the
Right.
book company when so
King of all
like
media.
yeah, he's a king of all media because he's doing it at the right time. And it's a lot cheaper to take a personality like Howard Stern than it is to develop a bunch of IP through all these different channels. So he was so prevalent in the 90s because he has a mega corporation pushing him. And that's easier to do when there's no rules on ownership restrictions.
Yeah. And that's what I found funny about the conservative groups that hated Howard Stern
Hmm.
is like there's an irony there because like these media companies that are empowering this culture that they hate, the like gross shit that he talked about, were made possible by conservative economic policies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you don't, Viacom CBS is the largest media merger of all time at that point. The radio empire that they had even before that was just built together through a series of continual mergers. He wouldn't have such, amplification if like you had regulatory safeguards. So it is quite interesting. Now Stern now is a whole different route. He's all just satellite radio now. Like he's like I guess it's like when a band has hit their peak 30 years later, they don't go hard like they used to do. Like he just does like
Right.
the one thing now. He's not
Yeah, and it's
right.
like they're like Mark Maron style interviews of celebrities. Like that he's almost like
Yeah.
listening to NPR now. They're really good interviews, honestly. Maybe that I'm saying that
He's a good
'cause
interviewer.
yeah, because I'm an older dude now, but like it's not queef contests
So
anymore,
in
like
1999, he brought on fucking porn stars and had them vomit on each other,
right. Right. I don't think a lot of people understand how insane the Howard Stern
which
show
is an
was.
insane thing to do for something you're listening to.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't know if they're actually vomiting, but they really were because well, I guess they would put it on E then, but
Yeah, I mean, I watched the E show late at night, I remember, and being like, I feel like I'm watching porn. Like that's what it felt
yeah,
like. It
it was
was
very pornographic.
it was super funny though. Like he captured something about the kind of like glee of sort of debasement. You know what I mean? Like the kind of
Hmm.
idea of like look how fucked up people really are, and there's something hilarious about that. And I think that nugget is true of everyone, and yet it can be empowered and it can be sort of accelerated by different kind of groups. I'm sitting here thinking about like the conservative groups that hated Stern. Like, does that strain of conservatism like even exist or have power anymore? Because like in the 90s, it was like Bob Dole ran for president in 96. And he was
Yeah.
like talking about Pulp Fiction and Train Spotting and all these movies that are all about drugs. And he was going after video games. And he was going after like the Howard Stern trash culture. It doesn't feel like with Donald Trump as the like mainstay of the Republican Party, conservative politics seems like it almost dropped that. Am I wrong on that?
No, I would say doesn't that strain doesn't have much power. I'm sure those people exist and they probably have groups like those was it the Catholic League? What was it, that one? There was that one group that's always harassing TV shows if they do anything that they perceive as remotely Catholic, and they're like fairly right wing. Like those groups exist, but they don't have any influence in electoral politics anymore.
Well, liberals seem to have become the cops in a lot of ways, like in
Yeah,
terms of like saying like you can't
what you could
say
say.
that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's. I mean, what drives me crazy about the cancel culture conversation is the idea that it exists just on one side. Everyone is wants to cancel the other side. Like everyone wants to say like you can't say that. But liberals became very much so about that once it seems like there was an empowerment of like a particular sort of vision that was counter to everything the liberals are trying to create, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's sort of thing drove me nuts because like so when I was a kid, and well not even kid, like young adult, I lived like first 24 years of my life in Nebraska, and the people I was constantly offended with, like like I made filthy music and I made like home movies and clearly I'm writing, I have two sex books and all this shit. I was
Filthy
always
music, you're talking about like Bloodhound Gang type stuff?
yeah, the kind, yeah, like yeah, Tenacious D sort of thing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
I'm
cock
with you.
rock. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the people I was offending like my whole life growing up, because I'm living in a small conservative town in rural Nebraska. I'm offending Christian conservatives, and like they're pissed off what I'm saying, and the people who are like, down with my free expression were all very left.
Yeah,
Like those are
right.
my friends.
That's
And
funny.
then like in New York, the people I've met like in the workplace who like are the most like judicious of wanting to find like an old tweet or statement someone made and try to punish that person all present themselves as being leftist or at least liberal. So
Right.
it's like I was like this is really flipped on its head from what I grew up with.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Maybe it's just like rebellion is defined by like who are the authoritarians around you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because I grew up in a Southern California town where the rich kids were all like elitist liberals, and they all were kind of hippies, and they kind of had like certain orthodoxies, and it was very easy to troll them and piss them off by like expressing conservative quote unquote ideas. So like I had conservative, I fell into the kind of like Rush Limbaugh, like kind of like punk thing in the 90s in high school. It sounds so weird to people now to say that. But I mean, there was a sort of subversive charge to expressing conservative politics around people who were shocked and outraged by it. And it makes sense that like if you're living in Nebraska and like the authoritarians and the people who are shushing you are Christian conservatives, then it goes the other way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's strange to see it flipped though that way. What you're describing almost sounds like a Alex P. Keaton sort of like
Yes.
I you know I'm gonna stick it to like those people by being right wing.
Yeah, but doesn't that still have some sort of charge to it? I
Oh, there's
mean,
tons of
yeah.
people who do that now
Look at
who
the
are in
Charlie Kirk kids, dude. Like
yeah
they're all doing that. They're like, "Oh, are you triggered, liberal?" Like that's their whole approach.
yeah, and they've it's funny about their whole approach because I have a chapter on Turning Point USA in my previous book Rural Rebellion, which is about Nebraska politics. Their whole thing about like, are you triggered, liberal? Their whole thing is about canceling people. That's all they fucking do.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
they film people out of context and then like try to get them fired from their jobs.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, if it were up to them, they would be, and I think it is kind of going to be up to them. They would be like eliminating the professor class, like they would be just like liquidating college professors who they think are all just Marxists, indoctrinating the students to believe in like pronoun shit.
Yeah,
Ugh.
yeah, that would be their wet dream.
Yeah, so your book reminded me of so much shit in '99. The Insane Clown Posse in wrestling. Can we talk a little bit about
Oh
that?
yeah,
Because
I love that stuff.
yeah,
Whoop whoop.
I mean, I loved Insane Clown Posse because I thought they were just such great trolls. Like they're you talk about that kind of music, that like that was hot. Like using like really raunchy language, graphic sex descriptions, all of it like sort of like with a 90s ironic vibe to it. That stuff was really, really popular among like the stoner kids that I was and was a part of when I was in college. I didn't. It's funny because I think my thing with Insane Clown Posse was I was introduced to them through Eminem, who was sort of
Oh,
also.
yeah, with their
I mean, he's
beef.
the king of all that stuff. What Marshall Mathers LP is somewhere in like 2000, right? It's like right after 99.
Yeah, it might even be 99, or is that the some? I get the Marshall Mathers and some shady LPs mixed
Slim
up. One of
Shady
the
came out in like 98, I think.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, they had a beef that went along a long time. With ICP, they're always an acquired taste, but they were like,
To say the least.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but like in '99, they were so big relative to what they've been otherwise. Like two platinum records at that time, playing Woodstock in '99, wrestling in WCW, like getting in beefs with like, guys like Eminem who are like just so much more popular than them. They were on Howard Stern show all the time. They were as mainstream as they ever were going to be. And what I've found fascinating about them, and still do to this day, is that they do such a good job of like projecting the like us versus them, like, fuck the world, be with us, the juggalos. Like it's like a religion. Like you're safe with us on the inside. The rest of the world is like hostile and out to get you, which is easy to project yourself that way. And the FBI says your fans are a designated gang. But even before the FBI lawsuit, they built a religious following off of like murder, wicked clowns, and weird sex acts.
Yeah, I love what you say about Insane Clown Posse and that sort of cult following. The idea that, yeah, it's us versus them, but also in this new and it anticipates the like social media world in this new kind of media landscape. People are able to create profit and power from having smaller audiences that are more dedicated to the whole project. In other
Hmm.
words, it is like creating little cults. And it seems like, I mean, this. There are like these YouTube channels that I find sometimes, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I've never even heard of it. And yet it has like, an audience of maybe, a couple 100,000 or 1 million people who are super, super into whatever weird thing this YouTube channel is doing. And they're making tons of money off it. It just doesn't exist in the same way in terms of like you need giant stardom in order to make a lot of money and have a dedicated audience.
Yeah, you could sustain yourself in entertainment. So ICP has shown like you could sustain a successful career by going deep with few people. And that might even be better than going shallow with, millions and millions of people. Like
Right.
there's how many bands have come up and like had an album, especially in the 90s, went platinum. They probably made some money then, and then like they disappeared, didn't do shit. They're not touring now. No one never became a super fan of them. You kind of hear them like on a 90s playlist. So that be the end of it. Like Spin Doctors is what I'm thinking of. Like there's a ton of bands like that, perfectly fine bands. ICP is still making money despite like having probably just, tens of thousands of dedicated fans who they buy like their merch. They buy their board game and their hockey jersey, and like they fucking
They're
tattoo
super
themselves with their
into it.
shit. They
Yeah.
go to the gathering. Violent J, the way he like put it was like, it doesn't matter when we put out an album. It doesn't matter when we tour. We can like tour, make a movie, do anything whenever we want because we don't have to stimulate demand because we have our audience. Like it's not like we're gonna catch people and we're gonna remind them like who we are and try to get like this craze going of ICP. It's like, no, we just have our dedicated core that's always with us and we'll do shit whenever we want, however we want, which is
Mm.
like pretty freeing, especially for a group that's been independent for 25 years now on their own label.
And they know, and they're not really Trump people either. They're sort of
No.
like they became almost like liberals a little bit, at least culturally, right? They're like super. Their message is very like about much about like accepting people for who they are and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Am I
ICP is yeah, they don't follow partisan politics directly, but
Right.
they like yeah, their music's always been like uh fuck bigots. Like that's always like
Yeah.
they have songs like in 1992 about burning the Confederate flag. Like fuck your rebel flag. That's like something they've always been proclaiming. Anti-pedophile, that's a big part of their platform.
And I just want to come on, like, be on the record as being anti-pedophile here.
They have
It's a
songs about
very
murdering
brave
pedophiles.
stance.
Yeah, very brave stance. Uh, but yeah, they are poor. Or not now, but like they're high school dropouts. Like they've always been for
That seems
poor
key to
and
the whole power is the class thing. That
yeah,
we're representing the outcast trailer trash thing. I mean, Kid Rock activated that in a really obnoxious way, but it's powerful. I mean, it seems ironically Trump does it too. Like he's sort of like,
yeah.
even though he's like a
Even though
child
he's
of
covered in
privilege.
gold, yeah.
Yeah, right. But it's gaudy. It's like being hated by the liberal elites it seems like part of the defining element of trash, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. And ICP was hated pretty broadly by many groups of people in the 90s. But yeah, I would say come off progressive because they, are about advocating for the poor. Like, and they're not going to be like they're not right wing because they're not like the type of people who are going to be anti-immigrant or any shit like that.
Right. Right.
No judgment. That's kind of like the Juggalo thing. Like, let your freak flag fly.
Right. That's interesting. I'm trying to figure out how that whole cult thing applies to like big mainstream politics because yeah, you need like a dedicated cult core maybe to win like a presidential election, and that's what MAGA is. But you also need like the swing voters and like, like a big, you need a big broad tent if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see that need still be there in politics. In other words, what you said about like it being like so shallow that you appeal to everybody. At the same time, there's clearly such power today in having like this rabid base.
Oh yeah, I mean, Trump's. I mean, he's won two elections, almost. Won a third. He is unpopular with the vast majority of Americans. Like, but he could win those nominations so easily each time, especially the last two times, by having such fervor, such intense fandom from those who buy in. There's like a third of Americans that'll just like believe anything he says, no matter how asinine. And they're like, it's like a lifestyle. Yeah, they buy the same shit like with the same Clown Posse. They buy his merch, they adorn their house with his stuff, they promote his books. That's what like kept his movement alive during his legal trials, during his financial difficulties. Um,
Mm.
and now they're the ones who are getting pardoned for all their terrible crimes.
Well, the insane clown posse and Trump are connected by pro wrestling in some way. So maybe we can talk a little bit
Okay.
about wrestling because yeah, it seems like there's been in the academic world. I think we've had a few people on the show actually talking about this. Like pro wrestling became a sort of template for people to understand what's
Yeah.
going on with Donald Trump. So what's your take on kayfabe and all of that? Because it does seem important. It does seem like that like theater and performative element and sort of like we're all in on the joke element of it is an important way of understanding today's political landscape.
Yeah, it is important. I'm certainly not the first that this has become a more common theory, especially with Trump as president, that kayfabe, the suspending disbelief for the advancement of a storyline, like you're going on the con, um, everyone knows that it's fake, but it's presented as such for a storytelling. Ultimate Warrior is not really from parts unknown. The Rock and Mankind really didn't hate each other in '99. Like Undertaker and Kane weren't actually brothers. That's all kayfabe. That's like a lot of the shit you see in political debates now where like especially with Trump, he's saying something that like is asinine. No way it's true. Like we're going to annex Canada. Oh yeah, Canada's going to become 51st state. Okay. In what way is that even logistically possible? And even if it did, it actually make United States more left. Like that would be a move that would disadvantage Republicans. But anyways, okay,
Do they
so
just get two senators? That's my question.
yeah,
It's
that's a
just
big landmass. Yeah,
one state.
one state. Well, yeah, if it's one state, I guess the Senate would still be what it is. But um, he says that, and I think even his supporters know that's bullshit. But they like where he's going with that line of argument enough and how he's presenting it that they support it and they're in on it. Like they'll just roll with it and see where he goes with it. Like the same way like when I'm watching pro wrestling, I don't like stop and be like Mankind and or no, I mean Kane and Undertaker aren't brothers. Like I'm just like okay, I'm a fan of this. I like what they're doing. Let's see where it goes. There's no calling out the nonsensical stuff.
Well, even Jerry Springer was like had an element of fakeness to it, right? Like it felt like it doesn't matter if it's real. It's
Yeah,
the
definitely
show
some of
of
it was
it.
engineered. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
the
there was a
presentation.
fight every single time. I felt like at a certain point in the Jerry Springer show, it was like the same
Well,
script where you'd bring out like the people who were
yeah.
pissed at each other. They would get more and more pissed. Jerry would amplify what was really, dividing them. And then eventually Fist would throw and Steve would jump up there and like have to
Yeah.
separate them. And everyone's
Steve,
chanting
Steve,
Jerry.
Steve.
Yeah.
The,
Love
the,
Steve.
well he's a talk show icon himself
I
now,
know.
but
Isn't that crazy?
the and his show is like so much more serious than the Springer show. But
Yeah. He'll be president one day.
it, probably we wouldn't be any worse than where we're at, but
Yeah.
um with Springer, but there's two reasons why they all look the same. Well, the producers would amp up all those people, like
Hmm.
behind this, like when they're interviewing them, when they're in the hotel, even right before the segment, they're like telling them what to say, just getting their like senses all juiced up to go out there and be like, you're gonna call your husband a bitch, you know what I mean? And the other thing is, if they weren't combative, that's those segments didn't air. Like the ones that were mild mannered or took too long to explain themselves, that's not good television. Like they filmed a lot of stuff that never aired. The
Right.
most
Right.
aggressive shit is what made
Yep.
the episode. Um, but back to the pro wrestling. Even if you watch like cable news, which I don't recommend anyone does, but if you do, um, they the way they interact with people is very pro wrestling like. Like a CNN anchor or a Fox News anchor, they'll bring someone from the other side, but it's like just someone they want to shit on just to
Totally.
show their
Yep.
superiority. Like
Yeah.
they'll bring
Yeah.
some really stupid liberal on Fox News and they'll just like run him down. Like it's like watching Goldberg just destroy some jobber opponent in a minute. Like the point of that is just to show like we know what we're talking about. We're the superior viewpoint. It's like very pro wrestling
It's
esque.
yeah, I feel like it's that when you put it that way, that's present in social media too. Like it's sort of like the kind of like I don't know, the lynch mobs that happen on social media in which like we've chosen a figure that's going to be like the heel today on social media and we're all
Yeah.
going to like gang up on them in the comments and shit on them. There is, I mean, it does seem like the through line in American culture is this need to like create villains, point the finger, shame, 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 shame. We all feel better about ourselves because we're the good guys. In other words, there's a narrative principle at play in all of this stuff where there's like good guys, bad guys, and it all kind of plays out that way. And when you think about wrestling, wrestling is a great example of that in a very broad way. Like in a cartoonish way, it delivers the juice of the good guys and bad guys that we need.
And what's interesting with wrestling is, and this is what happened in the 90s when it became more popular than it had been before. um the who's the good guy and who's the bad guy doesn't always go according to plan or how you would normally think of them traditionally. Like uh NWO, DX, Stone Cold Steve Austin, they did stuff that was more heelish. They would F you to the establishment, fighting my boss, backstabbing people, like breaking alliances. People liked them because of that. Like the bad guys became the guys you would root for. Like in the movie Heat, the 90s action movie, you're rooting for the villain, but by the end of the movie. And The
Totally.
Sopranos is that way. I think people like root for Tony Soprano. Um In politics, it's like Trump's kind of like the Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's historically like the bad guy. He's a fucking felon. Like he's broken all these laws. He tells all these lies. And there's a lot of people that um treat him like the good guy.
Yeah, and it seems like Epstein and everything that's going on in the Epstein shit right now is like a something that would happen in the pro wrestling world. That there would be this sort of like return of a dead character that's coming back to haunt you in some way. Yeah, it
Oh
totally
man.
fits.
Yeah, it feels that sounds like X-Files-ish too. Like the guy didn't actually die. He's still here, haunting your
Right,
dreams.
right. What was happening? I mean, I don't even know. You're probably more of a wrestling fan than I am, but what was happening in '99 in wrestling? Why was '99 particularly? I remember it being super popular, but
Mhm.
it was popular when I was a kid too. Like I grew up during like the Hulk Hogan era, who is a character that you could probably trace all of this through.
Oh
Like
yeah.
all of media, all of media and politics can be traced through the life arc of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I mean Hulk Hogan gave the rousing speech at the RNC on the final day to let Trumpomania run wild, brother.
And he brought
Um,
down Gawker, which was
yeah,
Gawker was in many.
I used to work for Deadspin.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
like
so you
fucking 12
know.
years ago. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Gawker is a good example, I think, of sort of the melding of maybe a progressive urban cosmopolitan thing with a trashy kind of language and cultural approach, if that makes sense. That's why it felt so devastating when Hulk Hogan was able to, through this lawsuit, like destroy Gawker because it felt like, I don't know, a unique voice that had some power in the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I wrote pro wrestling articles for a Gawker owned website, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And that was the type of, it wasn't like one single inspirational moment that made me write this book, but like that was like one of the moments with the Hogan trial, leading to the devastation of Gawker, where it's like pro wrestling is becoming more real and real life is becoming more fake. Like when Hulk Hogan he's on the stand and they're saying, well, you know, your sex life isn't actually that private because you go on Howard Stern's show and talk about the size of your penis. And he replied, well, I wasn't talking about my penis on Howard Stern's show. I was talking about Hulk Hogan's. Hulk Hogan's penis is, you know, whatever, 10 inches long, but Terry Bollea's is not that big. He said this in court. And
Oy,
they're like, really? And that argument worked. The
amazing.
so
That's
like that
amazing.
was
Yeah.
kayfabe in the real world as much as you'll ever uh gonna see it. And like that's like one of those things where it's like, wow, this like concept of presenting the fake as truth in our world, adapted from wrestling is really catching on in a strange way. I didn't think about a book at the time, but like as those sort of things started to happen, that's when I paid more attention to the seriousness of the low grade entertainment.
Oy, wow. Yeah. And that having like a legal power to be able to be like, I was just playing a character there. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Um, 99, I mean,
Oh,
99
so
was a,
you asked what
yeah.
was what happened with wrestling. I didn't
Yeah,
even
yeah.
answer your
That's where
questions.
we
We
were.
started talking about
Sorry.
Hogan. Well, so like in the late 90s in general, basically from 96 to like 2001. Well, actually, I'd say from 96 to 2000, we'll trace it back to Hulk Hogan. You have a real peak in wrestling popularity, much more so than the 80s. Hogan goes to WCW in the 90s. At 96, he comes out as heel and starts the NWO at the 1996 Bash at the Beach. By the 2000 Bash at the Beach, he's run out of the company in an infamous shoot promo with Vince Russo. And in between there, you had two companies spending a ton of money and they had to be competitive. It wasn't something you really had before. So like WCW pushed NWO. They beat them in the ratings, the Monday night ratings for 83 weeks straight. They outspent them. And then the content or the programming to become competitive, WWE became more violent and vulgar and sexual, and people loved that. They loved like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Brian Pillman fighting over a handgun in Brian Pillman's house. Like that sort of segment, which would have been super, super taboo before, still taboo, but brings in viewers. You know, the all the, you know, buxom ladies showing their breasts on Monday Night Raw, like that drove in viewers. So it became more sensationalized, and part of that was due to competition. And then once D WCW goes bankrupt and WWF buys it, that's kind of the end of that era. But 99 is the highest rated episode of Raw. There's an episode with the six-way tag team match that has over 10 million households
Mm.
watch it. WWE goes public that year. Like it's a banner year for pro wrestling.
You're mentioning the kind of like violent sex and violence, and it seems like 99 was a peak in some way of like sex and violence in terms of how it was being activated in the mainstream to make a lot of money and bring it. I mean, in a lot of ways, it felt even more free in the culture than it is today. Like you mentioned,
Hmm.
like Tenacious D and like that sort of stuff. I mean, South Park, the movie, bigger, longer, and uncut. I mean, I watched that like 8 times in the theater. Like, I just thought that was the most amazing shit. And part of it was because of like how nasty it was. Like, it was
Hmm.
incredible. And you have now, and I wonder what you make of this. Sort of like there's like a retreat from that kind of really crass culture, especially among like liberals or like young people that are like, I don't want to see sex in movies. I don't want to see nudity in movies. Like there's a sort of like feeling that like a lot of that world is offensive. And I don't want to be part of it. And that's interesting to me because I'm with you in the terms of like when I was young, like that shit was the edge to me.
Yeah,
Like
you want to
I
see where they would go with it.
yeah, and like it was funny to me. It didn't feel, I mean, it felt offensive, but it offended the right people. It offended like people who were so stuck up or were so like, yeah, in the Christian conservative vein that like, I want to use the word fuck a lot. I want to say the nastiest sexual shit. I don't feel that way anymore, partly because I'm just older. I don't have that like quite that like
Yeah.
sort of it comes off differently. It's maybe for young people, but it feels like young people these days, and I'm going to say that these young people these days don't really want to engage in that
No,
kind of
I
culture.
think they're pruder in
Yeah,
general.
right,
Which is funny is usually people like as they get older they bitch about like the next generation below me is too excessive. You know,
right.
they're too sexual or permissive, and I'm like the young people they're kind of prudes compared
Yeah.
to previous
What is
generation.
that about? How do we read
I
that?
I don't. That's a great question that I
That's
don't
your
have a
next
lot of
book, dude.
answer.
You
Yeah,
have a book assignment.
why are the young people
Well,
so
you write
prude?
about
But
porn in your book, right?
yeah. I write about porn, but I agree with you, and it's interesting to see like shows that are transgressive when they would remove episodes that were considered offensive. Like that's not something I would have thought. Like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like
Yeah.
okay, they have blackface in an episode. Well, you ever watch that show? The whole show's like probably offending someone. You know what I mean? Like,
It's the point of the show in some ways.
so now
Yeah.
the uptight people that like are easy to offend are often on the left, and it's like people on the right trying to trigger them.
Well, I mean, Sarah Silverman is a good example of that because I loved Sarah Silverman and she was part of that whole like David Cross, Mr. Show, Tenacious
Hmm.
D, like they were
Oh
subversive,
yeah,
but I felt like they
she
were
was very raunchy with her like her
yeah,
specials
they
and
were
stuff.
progressive though. They were like progressive lefties.
Yeah,
And yet Sarah Silverman like she has apologized for her like blackface comedy and like the stuff that she did back then. It was just a different I don't know. It was a different moment in
in the
comedy for sure.
'90s, like yeah, the comedians wouldn't have apologized for offending people, and very like now you have like Chappelle goes out of his way to I think offend a particular community, but like most of the comedians are playing it safer, backtracking.
Yeah, well, that gave the opening to the sort of Rogan set to be
Yeah,
like, oh, like comedy, you can't do comedy anymore. Like
yeah.
it's Elon Musk, right? Like comedy's illegal now, and it's like, well, what do you really mean? Uh, it's a subtle thing, because Sarah Silverman, I think she tried to explain herself that basically, doing blackface at that moment seemed like a way to be subversive, not in a racist way, but almost like to attack the absurdity of racism. And it
Hmm.
seems like, I don't know, for whatever reason, the moment we're in right now just doesn't, it just doesn't work the same way.
Yeah, if we need someone will have to dig up Gigi Allen's body
Oh
and
God.
bring him back to
Yeah.
bring all the subversive.
Dude, watching the Gigi Allen documentary and watching him like, take a shit in his hand and throw it at the crowd and shit like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like, dude, what world is this? And he died in like the mid 90s, I think. But he was like, He was on Jerry Springer and shit like that. He was like part of the whole trash culture vibe
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, him and like Guar and mentors and but he was like the worst. Like he would punch women. He would do the
Oh
worst
yeah,
stuff. He's
he's
like
a
actually a
nasty
terrible person.
motherfucker.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
like a terrible person.
yeah, he's absolutely disgusting. I mean, that's part. I guess that's part of like,
But yet I would find him fascinating.
yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah.
like. I don't think he's a good musician, but I'm like, what's this guy gonna fucking do?
Yeah, it's weird because there are these libidinal forces at play, and since as someone who's sort of like been on the fence with this stuff my whole life, I mean, I always looked at Gigi Allen when I was young, and I was like, that's cool, man, like that's fucking rad that he does that. And then like as I get a little older, I'm like, dude, what a fucking asshole Gigi Allen was. Like I would never ever want to be a part of that, and yet. I don't know. I recognize its power, right? Like there's
Yeah.
something really powerful about that sort of just let it all out there shit. It doesn't really exist in the same way. It feels like it's all in MAGA, honestly.
That's something that's been troubling too. Is so like I said, I'm a fan of this stuff. I used to watch Jerry Springer with my parents. I made my own course entertainment. I would be driven by like what are these subversive and irreverent entertainers gonna do? And the more they push the envelope, the more I'm like, oh, this is great. I like it's like what can they show me that they're not gonna that I'm not supposed to see almost,
Right.
And now that impetus is being like co-opted by like right-wing lunatics who actually hold power, not just like they're not entertainers, like they like make laws and shit, and they're not actually subversive or transgressive, but they are like cloning that act of
Yeah.
Jerry Springer and these other people, and it's tough because I hate their policies, but like I also appreciate the style and presentation because it harks back to things that I like that I wasn't supposed to like.
Well, yeah. I mean, Trump's funny, right? Like
He's actually funny, yeah.
that's what we struggle with. Like that's what we struggle with in terms of the politics. It's kind of like, well, look, fuck, dude. There's something really. There's no because liberals are so restrained. Like to see a guy like Trump say these things was just, I mean, to me, what's frustrating about it is like a lot of what Trump was saying when he first was like on stage with all the other Republicans and he was like roasting like Jeb Bush and shit like that and roasting Hillary. Like I'm like, this is shit's easy. It's easy in part because the stage is so there's such a template of restraint on these political debates that if you're just a little bit, wild in what you say, like you stand out from everyone else. It felt like very early on when he was standing on stage with like 18 other Republican candidates, there were savvy people that were like, dude, Trump's gonna win because he's the only guy that like participates in what you're talking about here. This sort
Mhm.
of like subversion. You know what? The left needs a guy who takes a shit on the stage but believes in universal health care. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like the idea of pairing that, the G.G. Allen theatrics with progressive policies.
Well, I think, yeah, and I think that part of the sort of I don't know if it's irony or like the kind of contradiction or not that the left and liberals find themselves in is like wanting to be I don't it feels like that culture often can go right wing more easily than it goes to the left.
Well, especially lately.
Yeah.
I don't know if it felt that way like in the 90s because a lot of the biggest critics of this stuff were right wingers.
That's right. Yeah.
But today it does feel that way. Like it can, these like if you look at the largest podcasters by audience size, that a lot of them are lean right
Yeah.
using this style. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a cultural style in politics, and it's up for grabs. That's interesting. Your book made me think a lot, dude. I appreciate you coming on the
Oh,
show.
I appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad you worked your way through it.
Yeah. So I want to say the name of it before we go. This is Ross Benish. The book is called 1999, the year low culture conquered America and kickstarted our bizarre times. Lots of fun ideas in this book, and for me, a total nostalgia trap in thinking about what was going on in '99 and how much it fed into the nightmare we're living through now. So thank you, Ross.
A nice on calling it a nostalgia trap.
Yeah, it totally is.
Worked its way all the way around.
Yeah, and you gotta, yeah, and of course you gotta plug your own product here too. That's all we are. Thank you.
In case anyone forgot what they're listening to.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, dude.
Oh, thank you.
Well, okay, I think that is going to wrap it up for Nostalgia Trap this week. I want to thank Ross Benish for coming on the show and talking with me. That was a super fun conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out his book. It's called 1999, The Year Low Culture Conquered America and Kickstarted Our Bizarre Times. Lots of stuff to think about there. Check out our Patreon page for lots more Nostalgia Trap content. Sign up to support the show. We deeply appreciate it, and we need your support. I thank you for everyone that's doing that, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.